Klein wakes up with his hands covered, a gun on the table, and a hole in his head. He's incredibly confused as vague memories begin flashing through his mind and the hole in his head begins to regenerate. He remembers his life as Cho Ming-ryu on Earth, but now he also has memories of someone else in his head, and it's all a jumbled mess. From what he can piece together, he is now in the body of a man named Klein Moretti, and he is an unemployed history major living in the city of Tingen. He tries looking through Klein's journal to see if he can find any more clues about what happened, and from the entries, he discovers that Klein met up with a man named Welsh a month ago, and together, the two of them began deciphering an ancient book. The book apparently belonged to the Antigonos family, and even though Klein doesn't really know anything about them, he gets the feeling that they are pretty important. Klein continues reading the diary entries and he spits a lot of important-sounding words like Black Emperor or the Tudor Kingdom, but he finds it strange that the journal entries just suddenly stop at one point. Although it makes a lot more sense when the gun is factored into the equation. Just then, the diary flips open to the final entry that was made before the original Klein's death, and it reads, "Everyone is going to die, including me." Seeing this convinces Klein that the original Klein had discovered a secret that ended up driving him to his death. But what could that secret have been? Just then, Klein's little sister knocks on the door to wake Klein up, and Klein can't let her see his blood-covered room. So he hurriedly closes the journal and covers the blood stains, but he still needs to figure out what to do with the gun. Melissa eventually enters, and she thinks it's weird that there are books stacked all over the floor, so she asks Klein if he spent the whole night reading again. Klein tells her he was just organizing his stuff a little, but he still has to hide the gun. So as soon as Melissa's back is turned, he drops the gun in his drawer. However, he did it a little clumsily, so Melissa heard the thud and asks what that sound was. Klein panics a bit and pulls a pocket watch out of the drawer as a cover, but then he notices that the watch is broken. So far, she hasn't been very affectionate towards Klein, but without saying a word, she takes the broken watch and begins repairing it for him, so she must care about him at least a bit. Once she's done, she goes back to brushing her teeth, and once she leaves, Klein starts wiping down all the blood in the room. His memories as Klein are still scattered, but whatever led him to shoot himself in the head must have had something to do with the ancient notebook. But Klein's death aside, he has to think about how he transmigrated here in the first place. Before coming to this world, he was Cho Ming-ryu, just an ordinary man who was absolutely failing at life. One day, he got sick of his circumstances, so he tried performing a good luck ritual he read about to make his life better. And somehow he ended up here afterwards. A few minutes later, Melissa has gotten dressed for school, so she gives Klein a plate of bread and reminds him to go to the bakery today to pick up some more. She also says she'll make a special meal for him when she gets back since she knows he has been working hard to find a job. But Klein doesn't plan on sticking around that long. He still doesn't know much about this world, but he knows it's dangerous here. So he wants to try performing the luck ritual again to see if it will take him back to his original world. But first, he decides to head to the bakery to pick up the bread Melissa asked for. But while he's there, he gets an ominous feeling, almost as if someone is watching him. Once he is done buying the bread, he heads out into the city, and aside from the blood-red moon that appears at night, this place looks like a perfectly normal city. While walking, Klein notices a group of guys playing the landlord card game, and he is surprised since that game also existed in his original world. According to the history books, the game was invented in this world by Emperor Roswell Gustav 100 years ago, and among other things, he also invented tarot reading, steam engines, and sailboats, greatly advancing this world's technology. Knowing all this, Klein comes to the conclusion that Gustav must have been a transmigrator just like him. He is kind of relieved to know that he isn't the only transmigrator in this world, but that sense of relief is short-lived as he gets startled by a clown and reaches for his gun. In his defense, the clown does look really creepy, so it was a natural response, but then he gets the feeling that someone is watching him again. So he walks away and hurriedly heads down the street. Klein is now certain that he is being followed, so he ducks into a tent to escape his pursuers. But the tent he entered happens to belong to a fortune teller, and since he's the first customer to come here today, she offers to read his fortune for free. The fact that she will be using tarot cards intrigues Klein, so he decides to go along with it and asks her to show him his past, present, and future. The fortune teller asks which one he would like to see first, so Klein asks her to show him his present, and she flips one of the cards over. The card Klein gets is the Fool, card 0 of the deck. It generally represents new beginnings, but before he can get a proper explanation, he realizes the person that was following him is closing in, so he needs to get out of here. A few moments later, a man walks into the tent looking for Klein, but by then Klein is long gone. Later that day, Klein is finally made it home, and he is ready to attempt the luck enhancement ritual again to see if it can really send him home. First, he creates the talismans and wraps them around the bread to act as catalysts. He then places the bread in the four corners of the room and begins the ritual, repeating the words "celestial worthy" 4 times in a row. At first, it doesn't look like much has happened, but all of a sudden, Klein falls to the ground in pain from a severe headache. It feels like his body is being ripped apart from the inside, but once the pain finally subsides, he finds himself in the middle of an empty void with red and blue lights scattered all around. These lights begin to converge and end up summoning a woman named Aubrey Hall and a man named Alger Wilson, both of whom are very confused upon their arrival. From their perspective, Klein looks like a near-omnipotent being, so they are both very careful about how they speak to him. Aubrey asks him if this divine realm belongs to him, and Klein has no idea what she's talking about, but he has never heard of a divine realm without a shrine. But as soon as he thinks that, a shrine begins to materialize from the gray fog. Klein still isn't sure how all this works, but it looks like he has control of the gray fog and everything in this realm. Alger asks Klein who he is, and it seems like a simple question, but Klein hasn't had a chance to put much thought into it since he got here. He wonders if he is still Cho Mingru from Earth Klein's body, or has he truly become Klein Moretti? After giving it some thought, he comes to a decision and introduces himself under a new name. So he tells the two of them that they can address him as the Fool. Alger asks Klein if there's a reason he summoned both of them here, and in all honesty, this was a complete accident, but he is already committed to the persona, so he tells Alger and Aubrey that this was just an experiment. Neither of them question it, but Aubrey asks if it's alright for them to leave now since he doesn't need anything from them. Klein assures them that he will send them home if they ask him to, so they are in no danger, and Aubrey is kind of enjoying this whole experience. She has always wanted to learn more about the supernatural world, so she asks Klein if he can tell her how to become a Beyonder. Klein has no idea what a Beyonder is supposed to be, but he can't admit that, so he tells Aubrey to ask Alger because he should have an answer. Alger is still very suspicious of Klein because Aubrey sounds like she's a noble lady from Leon, and Alger was miles away at sea when he was summoned, so it would have taken a tremendous amount of power to bring both of them here. That aside, to answer Aubrey's question, he tells her that she can become a Beyonder if she joins the Church of the Evernight Goddess, or any other church for that matter. Although most people never actually rise to the level of a Beyonder, it is still possible to become one. Aubrey appreciates the information, but she would rather not give up her freedom by joining a church. So she asks Alger if there's another way for her to become a Beyonder. In that case, Alger informs her that he has 2 Sequence 9 potions in his possession. Both Aubrey and Klein are surprised to hear this, but for very different reasons, because Aubrey knows how valuable Sequence 9 potions are and because Klein has no idea what the potions are supposed to be. Aubrey asks Alger which potions he has, so he tells her he's got the Sailor and the Audience potions, the latter being able to grant her keen observation skills. Before long, the two of them come to an agreement, so Aubrey asks Klein to act as a witness to their pact, and Klein agrees, but Aubrey actually has one more request to make. She asks Klein if he can organize more gatherings like this in the future, and Alger agrees with her because he now sees Klein as an important benefactor. Klein is a little hesitant to agree to their requests, since the more he meets with them, the more likely it is that they will figure out that he's not actually all-powerful. But he also needs to gather as much information as possible about the Mystic Realm, so he ends up agreeing and tells the two of them that the meetings will be every Monday at 3 p.m. Now that that's been settled, Aubrey suggests that she and Alger should come up with codenames since they can't be using their real names. And since Klein named himself the Fool after the tarot card, Aubrey decides that she will be called Justice, and Alger decides to call himself Hanged Man. Just then, back in the real world, there's a knock at Klein's door, and the sound is disturbing his focus, so he is starting to struggle to keep the Gray Fog realm together. Because of this, he is forced to end the gathering early and send everyone back home. Once Klein is back in his body, he hides his bloody journal and shoves the gun into the stove before checking the door, and when he looks through the keyhole, he realizes it's an inspector. He has no choice but to open the door, so he ruffles his hair and pretends he just woke up from a nap as an excuse for not responding earlier. The man introduces himself as Leaner and says he is part of the old police. He then walks into the room without warning, along with his partner, Dunn Smith, and the two of them start asking Klein if he knows anything about Naya and Welsh. The two of them apparently killed themselves a day ago, which is around the same time that Klein shot himself, but he can't exactly say that to the officers. Klein decides to play dumb and acts like he has no idea what's going on, but that doesn't work out for him because Leonard already found his journal, and the final entry is clearly talking about this incident, so he asks Klein what he meant when he wrote "Everyone will die." It's going to be difficult for Klein to get himself out of this mess now, so he just admits that he doesn't remember much from that night. Dunn informs Klein that they have evidence that he visited the McGovern's manor, and a gun happened to go missing there, so Dunn asks Klein if he knows anything about that. Klein immediately tells him that he hid the gun in the stove over there, but since he's already telling the truth, he goes on to explain that he woke up this morning after failing to end his life last night, and ever since then, he hasn't been able to remember much, although he leaves out the part about him being a transmigrator. As strange as that story sounds, Dunn believes Klein because it matches up with the deductions he made. But regardless of what Dunn believes, they're still going to have to take him to a psychic to verify if what he's saying is true or not. Upon hearing this, Klein worried that his memories from his past life will be uncovered as well, but he can't refuse Dunn and Leonard's demands while he's in their custody. They take him downstairs and are about to escort Klein into a carriage, but for a moment, Dunn gets distracted by a little boy and Klein seizes the opportunity to flee. He runs down the back alley as fast as he can to get away, but all of a sudden, the world around him freezes and things begin to float, so Klein realizes there must be a Beyonder nearby. He starts running in the opposite direction, but the road rises beneath his feet to cut him off, and the entire terrain begins to shift to block him in. He manages to squeeze through a tight gap before he is completely sealed in and makes it out to the main road. There he gets into the first carriage he sees and asks the driver to take him to the port as quickly as possible. The carriage starts moving, so Klein believes he is finally safe, but to his dismay, the driver turns out to be Dunn Smith, so Klein has fallen into his trap. Moments later, Klein wakes up at his desk and the door creaks open to reveal Dunn standing at the end of the hallway. The ominous nature of his surroundings leads Klein to believe that Dunn is a Beyonder. But apparently he isn't the only one here because Klein's head is suddenly grabbed by a woman and his mind is pulled into his dreamscape. The woman begins probing Klein's mind to look through his memories, but it looks like the gray fog is keeping her from finding out about Klein's past life on Earth, so he doesn't need to worry about his secret being exposed. But the woman is still searching for answers on what happened last night, so she grabs his head and starts asking questions. First, she asks Klein what happened in the notebook of Antigonov's, but Klein genuinely doesn't know. She then asks him what he was doing at the time that Welshania died, and her powers force Klein to reenact the events of that night, so he pulls out the gun and shoots himself in the head. After that, Klein wakes up in the hallway and the woman leaves his mind. She informs Dunn that Klein was telling the truth about shooting himself, but she couldn't find any memories of what happened before that. For now, Dunn has learned that the Antigonos notebook is still missing, and that Klein doesn't know where it is, but that doesn't mean he isn't in danger anymore. As he is now, there's no way Klein would be able to defend himself if someone else attacked him, which is why Dunn offers him the opportunity to join his organization and become a Beyonder. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.